Arnold Mindell to amerykański psychoterapeuta, twórca nowej orientacji psychologicznej i psychoterapeutycznej zwanej psychologią zorientowaną na proces. Praca z procesem jest drogą, która powstaje, gdy idziesz. Zaczyna się tam, gdzie codzienne życie, w jego problemach i zmartwieniach, radościach, nadziejach i marzeniach. Jest to początek podróży w nieznane, gdyż pod codziennymi doświadczeniami, dużymi i małymi, namacalnymi lub ledwo dostrzegalnymi, kryją się całe światy. Praca z procesem dysponuje szczegółowymi metodami odkrywania, ujawnienia struktury i rozwijania aktualnego przepływu doświadczeń, czyli procesu. Wkraczając na drogę rozwijania procesu, podejmujesz wyprawę poza granice utartych pojęć, znanych doświadczeń i codziennej tożsamości, choć nadal jest to droga do domu. Praca z procesem opiera się na wielowymiarowej świadomości, która za mistykami i aborygenami przyjmuje koncepcję świata marzeń sennych i świata śnienia. Jednocześnie uznaje również świat, który we współczesnych społeczeństwach jest na ogół postrzegany jako realny. Posługiwanie się tą wielowymiarową świadomością jest jak patrzenie w kalejdoskop. Za każdym razem widać zmieniające się kształty, kolory i wzory, które tworzą niepowtarzalną i spójną całość. Dzięki tej świadomości można dostrzec te części siebie, których nie dopuszcza do głosu codzienny umysł. Zamiast budować granice wokół jedynego, prawdziwego ja, praca z procesem dostrzega spontaniczną, wieloznaczną i różnorodną naturę danej osoby i zachęca do rozwijania jej na swój własny sposób.
One of the things that you wrote really stuck with me, and that is that if you were to describe what you mean when you use the term process in process psychology, the closest thing that you could get to is the ancient Chinese notion of the Tao.
Yes.
I wonder if you could begin by amplifying upon that.
Well, the very basis of process-oriented psychology, or process work as we sometimes call it, is an ancient thing. It is not a new work at all. It's an ancient work, like updating an ancient work, the Chinese idea of the Tao, or the time, what is happening in a given moment. That's what what I mean by the word Tao. And should I say more about that?
Well, Tao, that comes from the Chinese philosophy of Taoism.
Taoism.
The Tao Te Ching, written by Lao Tzu about 2,500 years ago. It's the basis also of the I Ching, which is the Chinese book of divination, the book of changes.
That's right.
It's a very mystical concept to me.
Very mystical and very practical at the same time. The Tao is what is happening. It's the moment. It's, in German they'd say, the Zeitgeist, the spirit of the times. And process-oriented psychology tries to find the Tao, or the spirit of the moment, and work with it. That's its very basis.
It sounds very much like the idea, go with the flow.
Go with the flow is a great idea, and Taoism was a great idea, but the problem is that in spite of the depth of this ancient idea and the modern hope to go with the flow of things, people have trouble doing that because a lot of the flow is unconscious, or it goes against what we consciously want to do. So process work attempts to find out what is happening in the moment and what is happening that you don't want to perceive. So it works with two levels of perception.
In other words, what is consciously happening, what you would describe yourself doing, and some other unconscious process that's trying to happen at the same time.
That's right. Like right now, I'm sitting talking to you. I'm identifying myself as being, I'm trying to explain process-oriented psychology and enjoying the communication with you and these cameras and the hot lights. That's one thing that's going on. And another thing which I'm not focusing on in the moment, but which I open up to when I'm doing it with you, is I can also tell at the same time that there is a sort of openness inside me. So if I were really to work on my process, it would be not just the momentary communication with you, the hot lights and the excitement of the moment, but it would be get in touch with this open part of myself, which I wouldn't normally notice. So the Tao is what we notice, and things that are at the edge of our awareness that we don't notice, or don't want to notice.
Yeah. Now, you use the terms, I think, primary and secondary processes to describe these.
That's right.
And a lot of the work is a question of noticing what is the secondary
That's right.
process.
That is right.
And amplifying it.
That is right. Well, process work actually, the idea behind it is a hope to be able to work with the full spectrum of human experience, with individuals in relationships or with large groups or political scenes. conflicts included. So to do that, we need to, since people go into various states of consciousness, like getting angry, or this openness feeling that I'm feeling just now, or whatever, we have to be able to see what they, or notice what they, how they identify themselves, their conscious identification, that we call the primary process, and how they're not, the things that they disidentify themselves from, or experiences that are happening, like, and we call those secondary or more unconscious processes.
Powstanie pracy z procesem w latach 70. XX wieku było wynikiem poszukiwań Arnolda Mindella w dziedzinie doznań cielesnych oraz jungowskiej analizy snów. W czasach, gdy praktyka psychoterapeutyczna była nastawiona w dużej mierze na szukanie patologii, Mindell rozwijał praktykę świadomości, która wykraczała poza dychotomię zdrowia i choroby. Ukuł wyrażenie sen, który wydarza się w danej chwili, aby przekazać ideę, że ten inny wymiar codziennej rzeczywistości nieustannie manifestuje się na wiele sposobów. Następnie rozwinął koncepcję i praktykę wnoszenia świadomości tzw. wymiaru śnienia do codziennych doświadczeń. W swojej praktyce psychoterapeutycznej zauważył związek między doświadczeniami cielesnymi a snami. Kiedy uważnie przyglądamy się temu, co odczuwamy w ciele, zaczynamy doświadczać czegoś, co bardzo przypomina przeżycia pochodzące ze snów. Ten związek Mindell nazwał śniącym ciałem. W rozwoju pracy z procesem pojęcie śniącego ciała rozszerzyło się i objęło zjawiska przejawiające się nie tylko w symptomach fizycznych i snach, ale także w relacjach między jednostkami a grupami ludzi. W ujęciu psychologii procesu traktujemy sny jako grupę doświadczeń, o których opowiada dana osoba. Zawsze śnimy o sobie. Elementy snu są częściami naszej psychiki i opowiadają o mapie naszego wewnętrznego świata i wydarzającej się tam historii. Sama interpretacja snu w ujęciu intelektualnym nie jest aż tak istotna. Prawdziwym celem jest odkrycie procesu i podążanie za nim. Nie pracujemy zatem stricte ze snem, ale z procesem śnienia. Szukamy tego, co jest pod spodem. W jednej ze swoich książek Mindell pisze: podłożem wszelkich codziennych problemów jest śniące ciało, twoje najbardziej zdumiewające doświadczenie odczuwane zazwyczaj jedynie w obliczu śmierci albo w trakcie okultystycznych czy szamańskich rytuałów. Psychologia i szamanizm zachęcają do tego, żebyś wraz z innymi ludźmi żył śniącym ciałem, przekształcając codzienną rzeczywistość w wyjątkowy świat, w którym pojawia się doświadczenie i odpowiedź na najważniejsze pytania dotyczące życia. Ta nowa, ekscytująca i mityczna strona naszego życia daje ci większą kontrolę nad zdrowiem oraz głębszy wgląd w naturę świata.
I learned was that dreams and the dreaming process, in other words, following dreams and noticing dreams that come up during the day and what have you in fantasies, listening to those things is very, very important. It's teleological or meaningful, that what people do. So Jung took first-person experience very seriously up to a point. He said, watch what people dream, watch what people feel, and follow that. Try to understand it.
And what would be an example of that, following the dreaming process and using dreaming to get better insight about yourself and the world?
For example, a childhood dream. Jung realized that childhood dreams sometimes predicted the kinds of professions people have. So, for example, in my earliest dream in childhood, I remember dreaming about a bear, and he was like chasing me around, chasing me in and out of my father's car. And so one of the meanings of that dream, which has been happening in a way throughout my whole life, it's like a personal myth, your first dreams, what is that I'm constantly going back to my fatherliness and then out from my fatherliness into the world in ever greater circles around my father's car. The bear is chasing me all the time. My fatherliness, I'm a very fatherly, kind person, part of me, and another part of me is a bear that just loves to explore nature. That's the physicist part of me.
Arnie, you went from your studies of Jung to develop your own method, which is called process work. or process-oriented psychology, and it draws on a lot of different elements. There are systems theory, family therapy elements. It uses a lot of psychodrama and some ideas from Gestalt, and also is very body-oriented. Tell us about how you develop process work and how it's different from Jungian approaches.
Well, from Jung, I learned to follow dreams, and so I took that very seriously. I wanted to follow dreams, but at the time, the Jungian community was working with people mainly who could come and sit in chairs and talk to you. And I love that. I love talking with people who can sit in chairs, but it didn't work with people who were sick and dying in the hospital. It didn't work with people who were jumping around with extreme states. It didn't go far enough yet with its basic paradigm. So I decided to develop something called process work, which means follow what people are doing, even if they're not sitting in a chair. Maybe they're lying in a bed. Maybe it's their last 10 minutes of life or whatever. That's the coma work part of process work.
Indigenous healers have taught me that the quality of life depends upon body sensations that are linked to dreams and the environment, to what I call the shaman's body. The shaman's body, or dreaming body, is a name for unusual experiences and altered states of consciousness that try to reach your everyday awareness through signals such as body symptoms and movement impulses, dreams, and messages from the environment. The dreaming body answers a perennial question: how do you live in a way that feels balanced yet exciting, peaceful yet fun, satisfying yet terrifying? If you try to control or manipulate your energy, you end up feeling ill or dead. If you follow your body's sensations, you feel more completely here, as if you were really living and creating life. Following sensations such as aches, pains, and dizziness means living your dreaming body. After all, being an ordinary person is no fun. You take everything so seriously and personally. You always search for something meaningful to guide yourself with, hoping for enlightening dreams or experiences. As an ordinary person, you suffer, are afraid of and expect the worst, and are oblivious to the power of the unknown. You are always defending your identity and your personal history. As a phantom, you constantly worry about how others judge you or what the future will bring. You neglect the impact of inexplicable forces, living life as if it were all up to you. Consensus reality and social rules seem to repress signs from the unconscious. The reality most people follow seems to forbid you from investigating your hallucinations, aches and pains, and accidents. The shamanic path is different, for it is based upon sensing unpredictable events in yourself and the earth. For example, one of my clients dreamed that he had died. In this dream, he came out of his body, but was amazed to still be awake. Instead of working on this dream, we followed his momentary body experience, which he described as a sense of being tired. When he focused on this experience, the fatigue transformed into relaxation and a sense of letting go. He then felt and followed spontaneous shaking movements, which began in his knees, and suddenly we were in the midst of something that he could no longer explain. He felt that these spontaneous movements were propelling him to walk about in a strange, jittery, gawky manner. Suddenly he stopped and said with surprise that he felt that dead spirits were moving him. Now he was living his dreaming body. His body was moving as if he were being dreamed. His death or spirit had freed itself from his old body and his personal identity. He was moving as if he were dead. But something new was animating him, entering his body in order to direct it the way it wanted to go. He was not dead at all, but more fully alive than ever before. Though this dream and body experience belongs to a particular individual, it shows an important connection. If you take body snapshots, momentary body experiences or signals, and use them as invitations to the unknown, if you let them evolve and unfold, they mirror recent dreams and become the dreaming body. This is an empirical experience that anyone can test. Dreams are snapshots of body experiences that are trying to happen, and body experiences mirror dreams. I call this symmetrical connection between snapshots of dreams and the body the dream body. Dream body work, or process-oriented psychology applied to the body, is a matter of sensing your body sensations and allowing them to direct the way in which you live.
Arnie, can you give us some examples to give us more of a sense of how you work with dreams and how you bring that whole dreaming perspective into individual work and also group work?
Well, there's all sorts of applications to what I've done with dreams. For example, I'm going to tell you a story, a very brief story about somebody who had angina, heart problems. And he came to me. I was a Jungian analyst at the time. He came to me and he said, I heard you're interested in everything in life, not just dreams. I said, yeah, but before we go into dreams, tell me, what are you feeling in your body? What's your first person experience of angina? Oh, he said, I have a terrible knife feeling in my, like, hurts terribly. And then I said, aha. So there's a knife in your body there. And I said, now, what did you dream last night? And he said, I dreamed about a carving knife, a big one. So then I said to him, did you ever consider the possibility that maybe you should be sharper and get more to the point? He said, well, what do you mean? I'm a reverend. I'm a pastor. I work in the church. But the people have said to me sometimes I'm too wishy-washy. I don't get to the point. So I said, it might be possible for you to get a little quicker to the point, and as well as taking your medication for your heart problem. He was so delighted. He went and he made a couple of big points the next Sunday morning. And he came back and he said, gee, I want to pay you for this. And I was very happy. So that's an example of how dreams and body experiences go together, and how the dreaming and body experience are meaningful and may even be healing if you can integrate them.
And that same kind of pattern between body experiences, dreams, and changes that are needed in the outside world, that also shows up in group experiences.
Well, as you know, the getting people together who don't like each other, one group says to another, you guys are just terrible. You are oppressive. I'm thinking right now, but I can't tell you the details of it, of a border dispute between two nations. And on the border, there's a people that are very unhappy about everything. And these people are saying, you guys oppress us terrifically. Well, the others say, we don't oppress you, of course. The big nation says, we don't oppress you. And the little group says, you oppress us. And so the oppressor becomes something in the air, is dreamlike. An oppressor is in the air. No one wants to claim they're the oppressor, even though the little group too has, I won't say the details, has endangered the bigger group, let me call it that way, tries to oppress them. So by playing out the oppressor, which is a power in the air, both groups start to act out the oppressor instead of just accusing the other group of it. They get into it and play it out. And through that, I say to them, now get to the bottom. What's behind the oppression? And I'm thinking of one particular group process and where both groups discovered the same thing behind the oppressor is an intense desire to be recognized and valued in their individual beauty, the way they really are. And it wasn't just to oppress and kill the other person. Behind the oppressor was something deeper. It was the desire just to be valued. And as soon as both groups could see that, they do value things in the other people. So that was a momentary or a temporary resolution. The dreaming here would be the oppressor, which no one wants to admit that they are.
W pracy z procesem wyróżniamy 3 poziomy rzeczywistości odpowiadające im 3 poziomy ludzkiego doświadczenia. Są to poziom uzgodnionej rzeczywistości, consensus reality, kraina snów, dreamland, oraz poziom esencji, essence level. Uzgodniona rzeczywistość jest tym wszystkim, co na mocy społecznej umowy większość ludzi w danym kręgu kulturowym uznaje za świat obiektywny. To rzeczywistość życia codziennego. Do uzgodnionej rzeczywistości należą m.in. wartości i normy kulturowe, style komunikacji, różne konwencjonalne sposoby zachowań oraz wszystko to, co przynależy do tzw. sfery zdrowego rozsądku. Kraina snów jest natomiast związana z subiektywnym doświadczeniem, w którym większość reguł uzgodnionej rzeczywistości nie obowiązuje lub jest poważnie rozmyta. To przestrzeń naszych snów i fantazji najawia. Doświadczenia te są zwykle uznawane za nierealne, gdyż nie ma zewnętrznego obserwatora, który mógłby je potwierdzić. Poziom esencji to przestrzeń Tao, którego nie można wyrazić słowami. Nawiązuje do paradygmatu duchowego taoizmu, buddyzmu zen oraz wszelkich innych tradycji przekraczających dualne postrzeganie rzeczywistości. Poziom esencji jest obszarem poczuć, gdzie dotyka się czegoś nienazywalnego.
Odmienne stany świadomości to takie doświadczenia, które różnią się od naszej normalnej świadomości.
Będą więc do nich należeć sny, stany hipnotyczne, nasze doświadczenia narkotyczne, upojenia alkoholowe czy stany związane z silnymi emocjami, takimi jak wściekłość, panika, depresja czy euforia oraz stany wywołane przez medytację.
Definicja odmiennych stanów świadomości zależy
Zarówno od jednostki, jak i od kultury, w której ona żyje. Najkrócej rzecz ujmując, są to stany różne od indywidualnych i kulturowych procesów pierwotnych.
Odmienne stany świadomości mogą stać się groźne i niszczące, gdy nie będziemy się nimi zajmować.
Tak jak zaniedbane dziecko może ściągnąć obóz, żeby zwrócić na siebie uwagę. W pracy z procesem uważamy ponadto, iż odmienne stany niosą w sobie informację ważną dla rozwoju jednostki, zawierają przekazy i procesy, które mógł czynić ją pełniejszą i bardziej świadomą tego, co się w niej dzieje.
Badanie odmiennych, a zwłaszcza ekstremalnych stanów świadomości ma znaczenie dla całej społeczności i kultury. Może pokazywać kierunki jej zmiany i transformacji.
So what are the implications of what you're saying for our understandings of madness? And tell us about how you work with extreme states of consciousness.
Well, the reason I use the word extreme states is because medicine, for me, when it comes to many things like allergies and when it comes to things like extreme states or psychotic phenomena, whatever they want to call it, is in a pre-scientific phase. By that, I mean that people just don't know what it is, and most of the medicines are oriented, as almost everyone knows, towards calming people down and trying to make them more reasonable, even though it doesn't always work very well. So I use the word extreme state to be more scientific because it's just that the states that you're in when you're in an extreme state are states everyone goes through a little bit. They're statistically not quite as prevalent as other states. So calling them sick doesn't make any sense to me. They're states that we all go through, though people who go through so-called extreme states stay in those states longer or go through them more often. But they're absolutely unto themselves normal states of consciousness. It's just that some people have more of them than others.
So even though some people are in these states to a larger degree or they stay in them longer, everyone goes through moments when they're suicidal or they're experiencing paranoia or they're in some kind of other reality or having some kind of experience that for a moment could be considered psychotic.
That's absolutely right. Everyone is depressed and feels low sometimes. Everybody gets manic. Everybody thinks, oh, what the hell is life about? I don't care about life much anymore. That is a very, very common, especially in the dark periods of the year. That's a very common thought. That's why I call that people in so-called extreme states show the states other people don't really like to look at very much or work on. And so, because others want to marginalize those states become marginal, and the people who go through those states get marginalized. And marginalized means looked down upon. Oh, you're weird and you're crazy, you're sick or something like that. And that doesn't work for me.
And why do you think that those experiences and the people that go through them get pushed to the sides in society? Is it out of fear? Is it out of people being afraid of looking at those parts in themselves?
Yes, yes, and yes. It's because culture says, in a given culture, we say, we are this, we are not that. And when we say we are not that, it means that there's aspects to us that we refuse to look at and don't want to have. When people go to school, in kindergarten, teacher says, for example, I still remember working in Australia, and the teacher says to one of the Aboriginal children, stop dreaming so much. Come on, you got to be real. So suddenly dreaming and the culture of dreaming and fantasy and what have you becomes marginal, and the people become marginalized. So that's why I say part of the difficulty is that cultures get very, very rigid, and people who go through extreme states then come forwards with balancing kinds of experiences that could really enrich cultures. But you have to have a culture that's really open-minded to understand that, and that's, of course, my great hope.
That's a very interesting idea, and it goes against our ordinary understanding of experiences like suicide or mania or paranoia, that you're saying that they actually have something positive potentially to offer the culture.
Will they have, that's why I call it the city, in my book, the city shadow, that these people are shadows of that they have, that these are people who have experiences that could be very important for the mainstream cultures to pick up on and look into: spiritual experiences, far out playful experiences, scary experience, demons and all that sort of stuff that's just sort of pushed away, and the mainstream cultures need that more.
So our approach is from process-oriented psychology or process work, and that is based upon three different levels. We deal with the real situation, with the feeling situation or the dreamlike situation, the dreams in the background, and then we deal with the deepest part of the person as well.
That we're often aware of some of our emotions and some of our feelings. We say we identify with them, or we call them primary. And then there are all kinds of other experiences that we have, maybe we're shy about, or we don't know so much about, that want to express themselves. And frequently, if we're not aware of them, then they express themselves through our body, sometimes through our body signals, motions that we make that we're not aware of, sometimes through our body symptoms. One level is relating to what we call consensus reality or normal reality, like I'm talking to you and everybody here, and I'm on that level of kind of ordinary reality. And then there are other levels that are deeper, that are the background feelings that I'm having, the more inner sense of myself, and then the most, what we call the essence level, the most subtle experiences that I almost can't talk about, but I feel, I sense them inside of me, kind of moving me. And if I let go, I kind of just feel those things happening inside, to say it very simply, and see if I can follow them, and they will show me how to come back out.
This essence level is so simple, but it means you have to relax yourself and let yourself be moved by, as if you were dreaming while awake. That's the way to say it. And in this state, you see, what happens is spontaneous, creative, dreamlike, or new ideas come up. Oh, it opens up to the larger mind in you, the mind that's moved by your basic nature, that's moved by nature. And this larger mind has sudden insights into things. We mean that, like the Taoists talk about not doing, means being in touch with this deeper state, if you can sometimes. And don't be afraid. It will do things when it's ready.
If people, like if you're stuck in a creative project or you want to find out something, a new creative inspiration, also doing what Arnie was just showing. And you were saying, try to do something. And then a lot of artists and musicians have also said this in the past, if you can let go and just relax, as Arnie was just showing, and see if you can get to the state of a kind of empty mind, like they might say in Zen, and letting go, and waiting till something pops up that creative that you wouldn't have thought of before. And it usually comes very spontaneously.
Yeah.
And that's, for me, the source of an incredible amount of creativity. And we do it all the time, but we're not really aware of it. Like you're walking down the street and then suddenly something catches your attention. You see a little flower that's, oh, flower. Or you're walking and you see, I don't know, something that you hate or whatever. You're just going about life normally, and then things catch your attention. We call those little flirts that catch your attention. And usually we think that's nothing. But if you catch it and you follow it, like you see a flower and then you can be a flower.
That's so important. I can't stress how important that is. And you notice it if you really relax and you let yourself be moved and you have a sort of even dream-like, even spiritual experience. In that experience, if it's really authentic, is a oops, a little doot-doot is in there too. And that little doot is like having a Zen mind or open mind. Call it what you want, I don't care, but let yourself play a little bit more.
Simple and really basic. You walk down the street and you're feeling you're all involved in something and you're not sure about life. Then you see this beautiful flower. It's like a message coming to you. Little boop, oh, flower. And there's something about just feeling it for a moment. It's not even a big deal necessarily. Just feeling it, feeling that flower, feeling how the flower is moved by the sun, feeling maybe something hopeful is inside of you also that you didn't realize. Just for that little boop. But normally we just forget it and just keep walking. But it can be very easy.
The process of moving through levels of consciousness appears as phases. So what we refer to normally as levels of consciousness are also typical phases that we all go through. We are not bound to fixed states of mind, but have phases and are in constant process. Such phases are in the background of our inner and world work. Phases 1 and 2 are what others would probably agree to as consensus reality, relaxing and or fighting. Phase 1 commonly occurs when you think, oh, here I am. Forget dreaming. I don't want to think about anything. I don't want any problems. Leave me alone. In this phase, we don't want more new thoughts or problems. That's phase 1. Forget the other phases. Amy and I were recently working on the tsunami and tidal waves destruction in Fukushima, Japan. Thanks to Takeo Kiriyama for his work there, we learned that many children were getting thyroid cancer from the remaining radiation. That terrible tsunami had occurred a few years earlier, but many Japanese had suffered a lot just thinking about those terrible problems. They were thinking, leave us alone. We don't want to have to think about that painful event. They were in phase 1. So, to do group process work with those people and their government meant that we needed to acknowledge that many of them wanted to forget all the trouble. That forgetting is phase 1. Phase 1 in organizational settings and world work is extremely important to appreciate. You can try to fight the tendency to avoid problems in phase 1, but people in phase 1 open more quickly if their need to avoid pain is appreciated. Only then can they begin to deal with phase 2 problems. In phase 2, the problem that you were ignoring, let's call it X, is back. Your inner critic and outer negative political figures are X figures, creating tension for many people in phase 2. Phase 2 is full of tension and conflict. In phase 2, fight what is bothering you. If it is a body symptom, try medicine to fight it. But medicine usually represses phase 3. Perhaps one of our biggest world problems is our tendency to focus only on consensus reality in phase 1 and, in phase 2, fighting. Today, most people ignore phase 3, role switching, and phase 4, detaching, and therefore we marginalize our full potential in conflict. We believe conflict means get out there and fight in phase 2. Dreaming in phase 3? Who needs that? To hell with that dreamlike junk. We have real problems. Let's get out and fight. That's phase 2, which is a crucial phase, but not the only phase. The dream body idea, on the other hand, is that you are your dreams, and you are like the body feelings that bother you. So feel your symptoms and ask yourself how you are that symptom energy. Phase 3 suggests that the things you hate are like you. Phase 3 is marginalized in politics, but not psychology. Everywhere in the normal world, people believe, I am this, I am not the other, and I am not role switching. No need to dream. This is the reality we have got to deal with. Fighting in phase 2 is important, but our relationship to the other side depends upon phase 3, role switching. This is one of the keys to our world work. You can not only switch roles, but you can reflect on yourself from the other's viewpoint. This is a key to world problems. In phase 2, you look at what is bothering you, X, and think, let's get rid of it. Go to the doctor, take an aspirin, and shut up. That makes sense sometimes, but remember to listen to that X. Most of us are like the most rational doctors and one-sided politicians. We need phase 3 and phase 4. Phase 3 shows us that we are not just talking about an X that bothers us. We are also thinking about another part of us, an X we don't know well. In phase 3, the possibility of exploring that X problem and or role switching becomes possible. The monsters you deal with in everyday reality often appear as dream figures at night. That implies that you are at least a bit like X. We need to face that X problem inside as well as outside. In phase 3, X is recognized as an aspect of yourself. Since you dream about X, there is the possibility of role switching in phase 3 and discovering how you too are like that X. In psychological work and in world work, such role switching can be crucial for relationships and solutions. Phase 3 is a dreamlike phase, close to the essence level, or phase 4. Phase 4, flowing through all this with detachment. Phase 4 is the essence experience within or behind the other phases and experiences. With awareness, you can go to this phase 4 essence level from any one of the other levels. Phase 4 is fluidity, flow, and detachment, or what Fukushima Roshi called empty mind, creative mind. He deliberately added the word creative to empty mind. When you are in this phase 4 process mind state, you will be able to notice that new things pop up that you would hardly expect. If during a conflict, you can drop into the essence level, which at first has no images, only a sense of openness and quietness, you will flow better. It helps you stay fluid between phase 1, 2, and 3. Sense phase 4 as much as possible everything changes. Remember phase 1, enjoy life. In phase 2, notice conflict. I am tense and upset. I am troubled. We are in conflict. Try to solve it, work on it. But if you are open to this phase and expect it, you won't get stuck in it. I loved my teachers in psychology, but they suspected or hoped, as in many spiritual traditions, that if you worked on your problems, you would become whole. You integrated problems and became free. You were enlightened. Yes, work on all problems, but the more fluid you are with your own and others' agonies and ecstasies, the better you will be in working with organizations, realizing that everyone and all groups go through phases. Hating conflict is natural. However, with a process work attitude, you can flow with things. Then you will be better at fighting in phase 2 and taking the other side you're attacking or being attacked by in phase 3. See life in phase 3 occasionally through the other's eyes. Then your opponents will go with you more quickly and not just hate you for awakening them. Remember phase 4, detached, fluid, flow. Sometimes you wake up tired, or you wake up depressed and think, oh no, why go on? From the larger viewpoint, fatigue and depression may press you to let go. Then you can feel deeply in yourself and let it move you. You need not do things. Simply let your deepest phase 4 nature do them. Don't just be down on yourself if you feel down, but go further down and let go. If you are exhausted, that can also be a good thing. Yes, of course, take a nap. Being tired can be a quick way to go deeper into your detached phase 4. Let me give an example of dream body work. I had a cold recently, so I took vitamin C. I fought the cold, phase 2, and I recuperated in a few days. But since I was a little tired afterwards, I realized that I needed that fatigue and went with it. The X was tiredness that felt like an ocean carrying me. So in phase 3, I looked at myself through that ocean's eye and I saw something quite amazing. From the ocean's viewpoint, I, Arnie, looked very linear and structured. That helped me to change and flow more. See yourself from the viewpoint of X, of your symptom, and you will find a key to your psychology and good health. I had a cold and I was tired for a week afterwards. I was doing a lot of things and was rigidly tense in phase 2. From the viewpoint of phase 3, I realized that I was not flowing enough. My problem was that the ocean was arising to make me more fluid. So I switched roles as in phase 3 and entered phase 4, becoming the ocean that flows. Medicine is important to fight problems in 2, but it is not the whole story. It is phase 2, fight it, an important aspect, but not the whole process. Practice role switching with symptom energies. Remember also to look at yourself from the viewpoint of the symptom, discover its viewpoint, and bring that into life. Amy and I were working in Dublin just before the end of the severe conflicts between the Protestants and the Catholics there. The leaders of the two main opposing forces were screaming, louder than anything I have ever heard. They were really yelling, each wanting to injure the other. Amy and I were in the middle trying to facilitate, but there was so much emotion and so much shouting, I couldn't think. Everyone was screaming, pressing toward the center of the room where two men were yelling at one another. The emotion was so severe that I lost my normal state of consciousness and everything I had ever learned. I am not sure what happened to me, and even before I knew about phase 4, the situation knocked me out. I felt nervous, I was shaking, and then I let go entirely. Then when I looked up, I saw for the first time the neck of one of the men fighting in the center. He was a very light-colored man with a very, very red neck. I simply said to him in the group, "Oh, your neck is so red." But I had to scream that in the middle of everybody else screaming, "You have a red neck!" To my shock, he said, "Yes, my doctor said I wasn't to come here today because I have lethally high blood pressure, and if I go into this conflict, I could die." Then suddenly, the man opposing him on the other side screamed, "You? You could die? My doctor told me not to come because of my heart. My doctor told me I could die." The whole screaming room of people quieted down as these two men stood there in shock, looking at one another. After a few minutes, they came closer to one another, and realizing they could both die, they embraced in the middle of the room with hundreds of people around them. It was an indescribable conflict resolution moment. Their screaming, everyone screaming, knocked me out into the essence level. Essence level intelligence saw that very irritated redneck. They came together by themselves. I didn't do much at all. We need to remember that being knocked out into phase 4 is a marginalized state, potentially full of wisdom.
Po latach przyjeżdżania do Stanów Zjednoczonych i nauczania tam pracy z procesem, Arnold i Amy Mindell wraz z wieloma współpracownikami przeprowadzili się do Portland w stanie Oregon. Chcieli założyć w Stanach nowy instytut szkoleniowo-badawczy. Pragnęli, aby praca z procesem znalazła zastosowanie w rozwiązywaniu problemów społecznych i mieli nadzieję, że Ameryka Północna okaże się żyznym gruntem dla następnej fazy rozwoju tej metody. Miało nią być wprowadzenie procesowego podejścia w społeczne i polityczne życie grup i w budowanie wspólnoty. Podejście Mindella opiera się na pojęciu głębokiej demokracji. Podejście to zakłada, że należy wspomagać ujawnianie się różnych części w grupie po to, aby mogły one wyjść ze sobą w interakcję. W szczególności zwracamy tu uwagę na te części grupy, którym członkowie nie dają prawa głosu i które postrzegają jako przeszkadzające. Interakcja pomiędzy wszystkimi częściami pomaga znaleźć rozwiązanie konfliktów i pogłębić poczucie wspólnoty. W pracy z procesem uważamy, że relacje są złożonym kanałem informacyjnym. Każdy człowiek doświadcza siebie oraz innych ludzi na wiele różnych sposobów. Widzimy, słyszymy, odczuwamy albo poruszamy się. W ten sposób uzyskujemy informacje o sobie i o innych ludziach. Widzę siebie, widzę innych, słyszę głos swój i głos tego, który do mnie mówi. Nasze przeżycia z otaczającym nas światem przynależą do tego, co w psychologii procesu nazywamy doświadczeniami w kanale świata. Składa się on z doświadczeń związanych ze zbiorowymi, globalnymi, społecznymi wydarzeniami lub instytucjami. Ludzie doświadczający procesu w tym kanale mogą czuć, że problemy światowe lub zbiorowe doświadczenia wywierają na nich ogromny wpływ. Otrzymują informacje o sobie samych za pośrednictwem doświadczeń wydarzających się w kanale świata. Można powiedzieć, że przydarzają im się związki z instytucjami oraz wydarzeniami światowymi. Na przykład doświadczeniem wydarzającym się w kanale świata może być kontrola z urzędu skarbowego lub otrzymanie wezwania do stawienia się w sądzie. Innym przykładem może być wypadek samochodowy, który jest doświadczeniem występującym w kanałach połączonych, zarówno w kanale ruchu, jak i w kanale świata. Zdarza się też, że kanał świata jest jednym z aspektów symptomu. Dzieje się tak na przykład w wypadku alergii, które są doświadczeniem wydarzającym się zarówno w kanale propriocepcji, jak i w kanale świata, ponieważ dotyczą fizycznej reakcji na substancje lub warunki istniejące poza ciałem danej osoby.
You are in a relationship channel when you continually fantasize about someone else and cannot integrate his or her behavior or find it in yourself. You are in the relationship channel if you cannot avoid thinking about, loving, hating, or identifying with another human being. You are always in relationship to something. The experiences you have when you are meditating alone can be understood as part of your response to the world or to the universe. When you are with another person, your reactions can be understood as part of your connection with that person. If there is no possibility of working on a relationship problem with the other person because he or she is not around, cannot be reached, or does not want to work on the relationship with you, then your process is to deal with the relationship alone. The introverted way is to understand the relationship problem as if it were a part of you. In this case, the other person or people are secondary processes which are bothering you. Meditation work on relationship can proceed by simply noticing what your process is trying to bring you, by carefully following your channel experiences, and by allowing your process to find its own solution to the problems. A shorter, more direct method of alleviating the suffering is to look at, listen to, or feel the other person and meditatively ask yourself how you are like him or her. Or you might imagine the difficulty you are having with this person and watch your own behavior in relationship. Ask yourself what edge you have with this person. How are you unfree? What keeps you from following your instincts and impulses with this person? Another useful method of working introvertedly with relationships is to see the other person or people. Feel them in your body, notice their movements, and then make a courageous leap and be them. Look like them, sound like them, move like them, and find out how you might need their qualities in yourself. The resulting insight will surprise you. The following recommended procedure for working on relationship problems with another person is a blend of relationship theory and meditation practice. The philosophy of this method is that one partner alone can neither win nor lose a relationship conflict. Either both lose or both win. And the best way to win a relationship conflict is to make discoveries about yourself. This relationship work can be used at any time, but is especially useful with those who are not verbally oriented or who consented only doubtfully to work on the relationship. It is useful with little children, with highly disturbed people, or when one is blocked in any interpersonal situation. Consider a situation in which someone makes you angry. Stop and feel what is happening in yourself. Use your proprioception. Do not talk about it, but feel it for yourself first. Pause, feel it, and now amplify your feeling. Is your heart beating quickly? Is your blood pressure rising? Do you have hot flushes on the back of your neck? Do you feel like running away? Like killing someone? Now switch channels while conserving the process. Feel whatever you are feeling in your body, and then make a picture out of these feelings. Make certain that your vision is a picture of what you are feeling and not an avoidance of your emotions. Do not avoid the emotional insanity of this planet. The next step is for you to interact with the image of your proprioception. I strongly recommend that you do this out loud so that your partner can hear and see you doing this. In this way, a part of the relationship which had been experienced only implicitly between the two of you becomes externalized as part of the communication system. If you don't bring this figure up and out, or work with it consciously, you will become unconsciously identified with it. Identifying unconsciously with a part means behaving with your partner as if in a dream. This perpetuates a vicious circle, and continuing it is unnecessarily painful. These split-off dream figures are parts of yourself which you need to find out more about and which need to be brought into life. They appear regularly in your dreams and in your communication with the environment. I think of meditation work on relationships as a collective cleanup. you begin to clean up some of the pollution bothering the city. You consciously process what is going on inside you and others rather than simply unleashing it on the collective.
What kind of world do you want? Your present answer is part of your answer. Like, for example, I'd like people to work better together. You have your answers. But also your answer appears indirectly through how you relate to yourself. Model the world you want by the way you work with yourself. It can't happen only outside. We need it outside, but it doesn't happen enough without you changing too. And the world you want happens through your dreams and through your altered states, through your deepest feelings. That's what I'd like to say. Most of the answers we collected from around the world, people say they would like more cooperation. Can't people cooperate a little bit more? Can't there be more diversity awareness, more freedom for everybody, more chance to succeed? Behind our desires, behind these great hopes, the needs for more diversity awareness, the need for more peace on this planet, the need for more safety, and all the different things that we need, cooperation, frequently, though these feelings and hopes are there, how do we cooperate isn't answered. So the dreams are important, but then comes the idea of how do you cooperate? How do you get along with somebody you don't agree with or you don't like? So world work arises from the dreams and from the hope. Work out and find out how to make these dreams real and realizable. And world work arises from the idea of that everyone should have the feeling of being at home. It's a privilege to feel at home in yourself, to feel at home in your community, in your nation, in the world. Feeling at home is the greatest power, and it is very marginal, and many, many people do not feel at home and are looking for their home at all levels. That's why finding your home is part of the idea here in the background of world work. And, you know, the world has several basic problems, but I think the human world, the main problem I feel with the human world is that we are so young. We're young. We're babies. You have to remember the world, the planet Earth is 5 billion years old. The universe, who knows exactly, is about 14 billion. But the human race is only a couple of 100,000 years old. We just began. And it looks it. We just began, and it looks it. The way we get along together is like, hello, we just woke up this morning. So don't give up on us. Keep your hope. We're just beginning. We lose our perspective sometimes. There's a lot more periods, not much. Who knows? We always say, if we don't stop our aggressive instincts, this planet will disappear, will ruin everything, etc., and that is somehow true. But at the same time, we're just beginning. Don't give up on us. We don't have enough deep democracy. We have democracy, but democracy is a wonderful thing. Everybody's voting. But then it's the power of the majority. it isn't the relationship between people. A deeper democracy is relationship. We need to focus more on our relationships as well as equal rights for things. We need to learn how to have the idea to relate, how to relate to one another is what deep democracy is about.
Over the past 20 years, world work developed from process-oriented psychology as it was applied in groups ranging from 3 to 1,000 people. Since I was originally a Jungian analyst and a physicist, process work, as its practitioners call it, has roots in Jungian psychology, physics, and Taoism. The Taoist view of life assumes that the way things are unfolding contains the basic elements necessary for solving human problems. Process work began with dream and body work and grew to include families and large groups. I began developing world work techniques at the end of the 1970s while working in Switzerland, South Africa, and the United States. I had been frustrated with the slow pace of small group and international change. Soon, multiracial and international learning groups formed around the ideas of process work. Other people began to facilitate groups. At first, we were retained by small European and American organizations. Then, as we gained experience, we found ourselves dealing with large, diverse, often international communities in open forums on topics of economics and racism. Today, world work training takes place in many large cities around the world. The training groups include as many as 500 people from all social classes and from up to 40 nations studying together for weeks at a time. These groups are themselves communities and provide a continuous case to study as future facilitators learn the skills and personal development needed to sit in the fire of tensions. These are often as heated as near riot or war situations. World work combines ecology's interest in the environment, psychology's focus on the individual, and social theory's comprehension of historical change. One of the most common reasons why group negotiations break down is that so many people are afraid of anger. We can't or won't deal with hidden messages and agendas that involve aggression. Then, feelings get submerged. Foremost in my mind right now is a tense conference in Compton, a low-income section of Los Angeles that is battle-scarred from conflicts between Latino and Black gangs. This is an area whose problems the media sensationalizes and where residents are afraid to walk outside after dark. Many different kinds of people came to our diversity, racism, and community meeting, which was organized by process workers in Los Angeles. The 150 participants included people in economic brackets ranging from the upper middle class to the homeless. The atmosphere in the conference room was tense. People from outside Compton were afraid of the area, and anger could be felt in the air as the conference opened. There were many heated exchanges and arguments about racism. On the second day of the meeting, a white man in his late 40s spoke gently but confidently about how much experience he had with multicultural groups and how he did not like anger. He smiled the whole time he spoke. A Black man in his 20s said quietly he thought the white man did not know what he was talking about. The white man ignored him. The Black man then stood up, faced the white speaker, and spoke vehemently about not being heard. The white man refused to talk to such an angry person. The louder the African American man became, the more the white man turned his head and whole body in another direction, repeatedly saying he was open to everyone. This argument came to a momentary resolution when a white member of our 4-person multiracial facilitating team, 2 were African American, 2 were white, pointed out that the white man's aloof behavior, his turning away, was based on his assumption that people needed to be calm to debate. A discussion arose about how this apparently trivial assumption was a mainstream expectation born of exclusivity and privilege, since calmness is possible only when the issues at hand are not troubling. Some mainstream participants did not understand. A black facilitator explained that there was a hidden message in the white man's request for calm. Follow my prescription for behavior and don't upset me about issues which are not mine. The black facilitators explained that hidden messages such as these marginalized non-mainstream issues. The dispute seemed resolved for the moment, and the work went on. Facilitators need to be open to anger and despair, but must also listen to those who are afraid of anger and who feel they cannot protect themselves against it. Dealing with anger, abuse, fear, and conflict is not always easy. Some consider it chaos. Others feel it is home. Facilitators require additional skills when violence threatens. Working through conflict can bring about a better peace, one that honors differences. Such work makes you believe that community change is possible. Many people are afraid to step forward and facilitate groups. There's good reason to fear groups. Their potential power is enormous. They can create in the facilitator a sense of being dominated, judged, or shamed. Fear of conflict is one of the reasons governments have shown little tolerance for dissidence, anger, and revolt. People are forced to resort to riots, civil disobedience, and revolution to be heard and to create social change. Political leaders, afraid of being attacked, unconsciously suppress violence and people who are angry. Before we can transform communities with conflict, we have to be able to survive it ourselves. A special kind of inner work is needed to transform us into elders who can sit in the fire. Without such a transformation, we will continue to repress our awareness of group tensions, thereby perpetuate the world's troubles. Today, conflict resolution schools often deal with social issues in an academic fashion and avoid working with the experience of rage. The mainstream in every country tends to skirt the anger of the oppressed classes. Politics and psychology pressure outsiders to assimilate and integrate. Western thought is biased towards peace and harmony. That's why many non-mainstream groups consider the very idea of conflict resolution a mainstream fabrication. Ironically, procedures that implicitly or explicitly forbid anger ultimately provoke conflict because they favor people who are privileged enough to live in areas where social struggles can be avoided. Meanwhile, people who exist on the periphery or the lowest rung on the social scale are treated by society as untouchable. Their needs are further repressed by the assumption that they should be even-tempered. We must be conscious of the mainstream bias in dispute resolution systems that side with government policies, ignore the emotional aspects of disenfranchisement. On the other hand, those of us who want to facilitate should not fall into one-sided support of minority positions either. That makes the majority feel marginalized by community process. The facilitator's task is not to do away with the use of rank and power, but to notice them and make their dynamics explicit for the whole group to see. One of the world's biggest problems is not only a lack of dialogue between world leaders, but there is too little dialogue between you and yourself. We lead our lives and work with conflict and political issues, but the dreaming aspect of dialogue is often missing, looking at yourself through the eyes of the opponent, at least temporarily. You still need to fight and sometimes even overcome the other person. But if you let in free reflection, will help whatever you are doing to be more sustainable. I think you were born to carry a certain kind of pattern, which you can see in your first dream and experiences. This pattern can be helpful not only in personal work, but in all relationship work and in the world as well. You are gifted with a relationship pattern that our world needs. The more you know about that pattern and bring it out, the more you can help our world. One of the biggest world problems is not the lack of world leaders, but that you do not see yourself as a world leader. I hear you say, me? A world leader? Yes. What am I supposed to do? Live your particular pattern or process in whatever you do. If it is painting, use it there. If it is dancing, use it there. If it is teaching or government, Use it there and everywhere. We need your pattern for a better world. We should have learned about our patterns in kindergarten because this work is elementary. Even though thinking about the symbols might be new for some people, it is also simple. Perhaps some people have a dream leadership style for life of sitting quietly and meditating. If they really meditate, if they really go inward in their own way, that will help the world. In other words, world leaders are not just people who are out there leading. Everyone who lives their own dream helps the world. We need all of us to be our deepest self in all the things we do. Let me give you an example of integrating this relationship work into the world in everyday life. At one point this winter, we were in the mountains near Bend, Oregon, skiing on Mount Bachelor in Central Oregon. One morning, we drove up close to the mountaintop to go skiing. When we were in the parking lot putting on our skis and boots, we suddenly heard this person far away in the parking lot screaming loudly. She was shouting at somebody. We ignored her at first and continued putting on our ski equipment. Although the screaming woman was far away in the parking lot, we could hear every word. She was yelling at another woman. "It is always about you. You wouldn't get in the car. You have been doing this all day. I cannot stand it. You always do the same thing." She was screaming and screaming. "You are horrible. I hate you." Although she was at a distance, she was screaming so loudly everybody could hear her. She went on, and the other woman who was her enemy stood quietly, looking depressed on the other side of the car with her head down, shoulders shrugged. Amy thought, "Oh God, what is happening? Those women will deal with it." But Amy continues. Then Arnie, who was halfway done getting his ski boots on, said to me, "Oh, great. I hope they'll still be there by the time I get there." So I scrambled to get my stuff on, and we skied over to them. The woman was still screaming at the top of her lungs, and the other woman was cowering on the other side of the car. Arnie got there, went right up to the angry woman and said, "You are very strong, and that is really good. That is wonderful, but don't forget that you love each other. And the other woman is very sensitive," pointing to the quiet one. The angry woman looked up and said in the sweetest voice to Arnie, "You are a very sweet man." Meanwhile, I, Amy, went up to the one who was shy. I had no idea what to say, and I said, "We all go through these things. I really understand." Then the one who had been angry said to Arnie and me, "You know, I wish I could ski too, but I have osteoporosis, so I can't ski, and it is just really sad." She suddenly became the weak one in the group. "I wish I could go with you," she said to us. So Arnie said, "You can ski a little bit. Your bones are troublesome, but you could carefully try it, at least a little bit." She smiled and wanted to keep talking, but suddenly Arnie, or his bear, said, "Goodbye, we are going skiing," and we left to ski. We looked back, and you won't believe it. We saw the two women walking together hand in hand as they got in their car and drove off. In this story, the mean woman switched and became the weak one, and the other one looked better. It was a really good example of how we can apply this work to personal relationships, and then to outer or world figures and situations. World change depends upon you, upon all of us. I know this from my practice, from working with different leaders around the world. I have already mentioned my work in Switzerland. People would sneak into Switzerland to work on stuff, hoping they would not be seen doing that by the rest of the world. So I saw leaders coming in and wondering about changes their countries needed. Just getting them to walk around and notice what emotions came up was so helpful. Those things have led to social changes in their countries. They had the power to enact their dreaming. But we need you and everybody to be able to enact your dreaming to really change our world. Those world leaders wanted to follow their dreaming, and with help, they tried and made helpful changes. But we need everyone for sustainable change. World change keys are inside you. Please appreciate the positive and apparently negative energies in yourself and use them as best you can. Each of us is a leader, each in their own ways. Be open and center yourself in your childhood dream energies. Don't wait for so-called world leaders to change the world.